Chapter 1: The Mysterious Theme Park. I remember the day my parents took me to Hyperion's Galleria of Wonders, a colossal, futuristic theme park built on a flat desert plateau, where technology and imagination seemed to merge under one endless sky. Tall holographic rides shimmered like mirages, neon-lit roller coasters shot through anti-gravity loops, and funnel cakes sizzled in rotating ovens controlled by AI robots. My parents had won tickets through a contest neither recalled entering. Regardless, we were thrilled to be there so early, with hardly anyone else around. We strode under a towering metal arch that welcomed us to a world of illusions and innovation. My father chuckled, "We're the first ones in, Matt, no lines." Yet my eyes weren't drawn to the big attractions up front, like the swirling space simulation cylinder or the 3D-printed candy floss stand. Instead, something tugged at me from the far edge of the park, where few ventured. As we progressed deeper, the crowds dispersed. Holographic adverts pointed to popular rides, Galactic Whirl, Quantum Bumper Cars, Nebula Tower, but my attention fixed on a flickering sign, half hidden by overgrown neon shrubs. The sign simply read, "The Accelerator," in glitchy, half-burned-out letters. "Mind if I go explore?" I asked my parents. "I'll meet up with you soon." Mum and Dad exchanged a look. "All right," my mother said, "but be careful. Don't leave the park and meet us back at the Mega Orbit bumper cars in an hour." I nodded my thanks and hurried off. The foot traffic thinned to nothing. The Accelerator sign led down a narrow path, more old-school carnival than futuristic. A rickety marquee with dusty, burnt-out bulbs flickered overhead. Beneath it was a small stage with curtains of tattered maroon velvet. It appeared unloved, perhaps abandoned. A voice behind me nearly made me jump out of my skin. "Curious about the Accelerator, are you?" I spun. There stood a tall, lean man in an old-fashioned tailcoat, somewhere between violet and tarnished gold. He had a twirled mustache reminiscent of a 19th century showman, and mischievous, twinkling eyes. I saw the sign," I stammered. "It looked interesting." His grin revealed a row of gleaming teeth. "Welcome, my boy, to the most thrilling ride in the entire park." He gave a small bow. "I am Barnabas the Magnificent, purveyor of wonders, illusions, and occasionally deeper truths." I stared, enthralled by his odd appearance. We were, after all, in a place of high-tech wizardry, and yet here was a decidedly retro carnival barker. "Is it safe?" I asked, stepping closer. A subtle scent of ozone tickled my nose. Barnabas tapped his cane on the wooden floor. "Safe, in the strictest sense perhaps, but what fun is that? Adventure is what you seek, and you've come to the right place." He held out a gloved hand. I hesitated, then shook it. A spark shot through my arm, the crackle of static electricity, or maybe something more. "Come," Barnabas said, guiding me behind the tattered curtain. My heart pounded as we entered a small chamber, a bizarre mix of antique carnival ride and sleek hidden technology. In the center stood a single seat, bolted to a round metallic platform. Old bulbs hung overhead, flickering in low wattage. He gestured to the seat. "Sit, if you dare." I lowered myself. It was surprisingly comfortable. I noticed a dial labeled Exponential Factor with numerical increments, 5, 10, 20, 40, 80, 300, 160, and 320. Written in fancy script. Barnabas leaned in. "We have 8, actually 9 increments of acceleration to accomplish today, each an exponential step into realms you can barely imagine." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean exponential?" His moustache twitched. "Doubling, tripling, unstoppable growth. You'll see, dear boy, you'll see." Then, with a dramatic flourish, he flipped a large switch. A deep hum rattled the floor. "Hang on tight," he announced, stepping back. I opened my mouth to ask a question, but the lights cut out. An electric surge swept through me, my stomach flipping. Next thing I knew, I was falling into a swirling neon vortex. Chapter 2: Exponential 5. The paper to the ceiling. I blinked, finding myself in a circular library filled with ancient texts. Sunlight cascaded through tall windows of stained glass, painting the polished wooden floor in kaleidoscopic color. Dust motes danced, and the scent of old pages filled the air. In the center stood a solitary table with a single sheet of bright white paper. Barnabas's voice echoed, though I didn't see him. First demonstration, 5 folds of paper, small in number but potent in effect. A warm breeze rustled the paper. I walked to the table, a tingle of curiosity buzzing in my fingertips. "Paper folds," I whispered, recalling a school riddle about folding a sheet of paper multiple times. I picked it up. An inscription glowed faintly. "Fold me 5 times. Watch me breach the limits." I folded once. The paper thickness doubled, twice quadrupled, thrice 8 layers, 4 times 16, 5 times 32 layers thick, nothing outlandish yet. But as soon as I set it down, the top of the folded paper stretched, as though some hidden force pulled it upward. With a mighty crack, it punched through the library's wooden ceiling. Splinters rained down, and I staggered back in shock. "Impossible!" I exclaimed. The tower of folded paper soared at least 30 feet, poking through the roof like a phone pole. Despite its height, it was still clearly the same piece of paper, just multiplied in thickness and length by magic, or by whatever this ride was. "A mere 5 folds," Barnabas's voice teased from the rafters. "Hold on to your hat." The paper tower quivered, then exploded outward in a swirl of white. A powerful gust of wind whipped me off my feet, and I tumbled into darkness. Chapter 3. Exponential 10. A journey to the clouds. I crashed onto a cushioned surface. My breath caught as I found myself on a rooftop garden in a sprawling megacity. Steel towers glinted, reaching high as aircars zipped among them. A breeze whispered through hydroponic trees. The sign on a rooftop door said, "Skytop Hotel." Near my feet lay a note on glossy paper. Exponential 10. Stack your plates. Watch them tower above the clouds. I turned to see a row of thick steel plates, each about 1 centimeter thick. My mind raced. Doubling 10 times doesn't seem much at firsthand, but if each plate is 1 centimeter, stacking them might get about 10 meters. That's high, but not enough to scrape clouds in normal physics. But clearly, normal rules were suspended in Barnabas's ride. I placed the first plate on the ground. A low hum. The single plate multiplied into 2. I stacked a third. They doubled to 4. My eyebrows shot up. With each plate I added, the total magically doubled, building into a single towering column. By the 10th edition, the column soared above the rooftop, punching through swirling clouds. "Unbelievable," I muttered, hooking myself to a harness attached to a crane. At the push of a button, I rose alongside the shining tower. Each steel plate, somehow fused, glowed faintly. At a few dozen meters, the wind whipped my hair. At a few hundred, I could see across the entire city. When the column reached 1,000 meters, the air thinned and my heart hammered, all from just 10 doublings. Then, like an overloaded circuit, the column began to sizzle. Plates winked out one by one. In seconds, the entire tower disappeared in a haze of sparks. My harness jerked downward and I plummeted. Whoomp! The neon vortex swallowed me again. Chapter 4. Exponential 20. The Lily Pond Ascension. Air whooshed, water splashed, and I found myself waist-deep in a moonlit pond surrounded by silver-barked trees. Frogs croaked in the distance, and the water shimmered with luminous lily pads bigger than dinner plates. A sign posted on the bank read, "Exponential 20, the Lily Pond," doubling coverage by the minute. I remembered the classic puzzle. If lilies double their coverage of a pond every day, then one day before the pond is full, it's only half covered. But here, the doubling was happening in minutes, not days. I sloshed to the mossy shore. Suddenly the lily pads multiplied. Dozens became hundreds, then thousands, each one glowing softly. The entire surface turned into a living, luminous carpet. My jaw dropped as they kept creeping outward, unstoppable. Then, just as they reached the pond's edge, they stopped. The place fell silent. Exponential growth, sudden, vast, unyielding, Barnabas's distant voice boomed across the water. One moment, it's half. The next, it's everything. A single lily pad parted, revealing a swirling staircase descending into the water. Down I go, I guess, I murmured. With a racing heart, I stepped on the top stair. My vision blurred, and the watery world faded. Chapter 5. Exponential 40, the domino cascade. I stumbled into a vast hall, a futuristic cathedral, with black marble floors and circuits etched into the walls. Rows of gargantuan dominoes, each bigger than the last, stood in a line that stretched into the distance. A neon sign soared overhead. Exponential 40, the domino effect. I recalled that a single small domino can topple something 1.5 times bigger, but in certain extreme demos, each domino can be double the previous one in height and thickness. By the 29th or 30th, you can topple a building, but 40, that's beyond monstrous. A note fluttered at my feet. Set them up, give the first a push, brace yourself. I grinned nervously. This was a demonstration I'd seen on a smaller scale in science class. I arranged the first few by hand. 1 inch, 2 inches, 4 inches. By the time I reached the 20th domino, I needed a crane. By the 30th, it scraped the hall's ceiling. I opened a retractable roof, and the 40th domino towered into the sky. With trembling hands, I nudged the tiny first tile. Click, clack, boom. The chain reaction roared down the line. Each domino slammed into the next with a force that shook the floor. The air thundered with each impact, dust raining from overhead. By the final ones, the concussive blast felt like an earthquake. My teeth chattered. After the last colossal domino toppled out of sight, a hush settled. I exhaled. Unbelievable. The floor beneath me disintegrated. Once more, I sank into Barnabas's neon vortex. Chapter 6. Exponential 80, the data storm. I landed in a corridor brimming with server racks, black monoliths blinking with tiny lights. The ceiling soared overhead, cables as thick as pythons looped across metal catwalks. A digital display read, Exponential 80, the data storm. A console beeped, text scrolled, doubling from 1 byte to a yottabyte, that would be a scale deluge. I gulped. That's more digital data than humanity usually deals with in a lifetime, possibly more than had ever been created in history many times over. A single prompt, press enter to commence doubling. Curiosity won out over caution. I pressed it. The servers hummed like a giant hornet's nest. The readout skyrocketed, 1 byte, 2 bytes, 4, 8, 16, past gigabytes, terabytes, petabytes, exabytes. Unstoppable. Sparks flickered overhead. The floor quivered underfoot. Massive arcs of electrical discharge leapt between server racks as though the entire room was overloading. A swirling cloud of ones and zeros materialized, whipping around like a tornado of data. "Stop!" I cried, staggering back as the binary storm swelled. But the doubling was relentless, each step pushing further into incomprehensible territory. A final crackling wave of data enveloped me. I couldn't breathe. I was floating in a sea of swirling digits. Then, as if popping a bubble, everything collapsed into darkness. Chapter 7. Exponential 160, the paper fold to the moon. I emerged onto a quiet desert plain under a star-filled sky. A sleek rocket rose before me, gleaming white with futuristic trim, like an odd NASA meets steampunk design. A blinking neon arrow pointed up the rocket's ladder, and a bold sign declared, Exponential 160, the paper fold to the moon and beyond. Board your vessel. My heart still hammered from the M&M madness, but I trudged forward, climbing the ladder. Inside the cockpit, a console read, Insert paper here. I patted my pockets. Sure enough, a crumpled sheet was there. I fed it in. Immediately, the console displayed, Fold 1, 2 layers. Fold 2, 4 layers. Fold hash 42. Reaches the moon, the classic puzzle. Fold hash 160, surpasses the known universe. The rocket roared to life, blasting off. We rose, desert falling away behind. The paper's thickness on the monitor climbed exponentially. Fold hash 10, fold hash 20, fold hash 40, over 1 trillion layers. Fold hash 42, the classic moon distance, roughly 384,400 kilometers. I peered out the window as Earth dwindled. We streaked past the moon in seconds. The console kept going. Fold hash 100, fold hash 120. We soared by Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and beyond, the rocket's speed defying explanation. The math soared too. Fold hash 140, fold hash 160. By then, galaxies passed by like street lamps on a highway. The numbers were staggering, outstripping Earth's mass many times over. Finally, the rocket halted near a swirling spiral galaxy. A hush fell. The console read, "You have surpassed the cosmic scale." Barnabas's calm voice came through the cockpit speakers. "Never forget how small increments compound. One fold at a time can reach past the stars." Tears pricked my eyes at the beauty of the cosmos. Then, as before, starlight dissolved into a kaleidoscope swirl. Chapter 8. Exponential 300. The M&M chessboard. When I came to, I was standing in a small courtyard bathed in warm lamplight. Overhead, a glittering sky spanned infinite stars. In the center of the courtyard lay a giant chessboard, each square about a yard across. On the nearest square stood a single bright red M&M candy. My brow furrowed. Candy, on a chessboard. A sign arched overhead. Exponential 300. The M&M chessboard. 1 M&M, 2, 4. So many candies, surpassing even the atoms in the universe. A large card fluttered down in front of me. Place a single M&M on square 1 of the chessboard, then double on each subsequent square. By the 300th doubling, you will witness an unimaginable total, greater than all atoms in the known cosmos. I swallowed hard. I knew a variant of this story with rice grains and a chessboard, or the typical notion of doubling 64 times. But 300 times, that was insane. Incredibly vast. Well beyond the number of atoms in the observable universe. Gingerly, I placed the single M&M on the first square. The chessboard glowed faintly. I moved to the second square, placing 2 M&Ms. Then 4, 8, 16. The courtyard air trembled with each doubling, like reality itself was warping. By the 10th square, there were over 1,000 M&Ms candy spilled onto the ground. By the 20th square, over 1,000,000 M&Ms. They piled higher than my ankles. By the 40th square, over 1,000,000,000,000 pieces. The courtyard filled waist-deep with chocolate and sugar shells. The sweet smell was intoxicating. "This is insane!" I exclaimed, trying to wade through the M&Ms. They rattled and slid beneath my feet. My mind reeled at how quickly the piles grew. By the 50th square, it dwarfed city blocks. By the 64th square, the classic end in the old story, there would be enough M&Ms to bury entire continents. Here we were going all the way to 300. The sky above flickered with swirling lights as the M&M avalanche kept doubling. 100, 200, 250 squares. The number soared past far beyond any number I could grasp. I saw cosmic illusions flicker overhead, galaxies weighed down by the sweet mass, swirling into black holes of chocolate. "It's too much!" I shouted, trying not to drown in the sea of candy. My voice echoed in the sugary tide. By the 300th doubling, the final total alone overshadowed the entire known universe's atom count. A deep rumble filled the courtyard, as though gravity itself was caving under the weight. The M&Ms condensed in a swirling maelstrom, collapsing into a singularity of sugar. With a deafening roar, the entire chessboard vanished in a flash of rainbow-colored light. I lay there, gasping, on an empty courtyard floor. I coughed, spitting out an M&M shell. The sign overhead flickered once more. "Behold the power of 300 doublings, beyond cosmic measure." Then the courtyard faded, and I sank again into that swirling neon dimension of Barnabas's creation. Chapter 9. Exponential 320, the final challenge. Blinking away spots of light, I found myself in a vast golden field under a sky that rippled like an aurora. A wooden sign, half buried in the grass, read, "Exponential 320, the ultimate seed. This is going to be an unfathomable quantity." I shuddered at the thought. A swirl of carnival lights manifested. Barnabas emerged, tipping his hat. "So you've made it this far. How do you feel?" I staggered, like my mind can't hold any more miracles. He chuckled. "We have one final demonstration." He held out a tiny seed, barely visible in his gloved hand. "Plant this." I knelt and pressed it into the soil. Almost immediately, it sprouted, doubling in height every second. A wisp of green became a sapling, then a mighty trunk. Within moments, it was as tall as a skyscraper, then a mountain, then so large it punctured the swirling sky. The ground quaked. I stumbled back, watching the gargantuan tree overtake the horizon. "This is impossible," I whispered. Barnabas nodded solemnly. "Indeed. And yet there it grows, exponential potential, unbound." The trunk split open. A glowing tunnel lined with fibrous roots beckoned within. Barnabas gestured. "One last journey, dear boy." My heart hammered, but I stepped inside. The roots wrapped around me, carrying me upward through fractal branches, into swirling oblivion. Chapter 10. Return to the Accelerator. The twist. Thud. I landed back in the rickety seat of the Accelerator. The dim carnival bulbs overhead flickered. My parents stood nearby, eyes wide and frantic, as if they'd been searching for me. "There you are!" my mum exclaimed, rushing over. "What happened? We've been worried sick!" I gazed around, dazed. The seat's harness unlocked with a hiss. Barnabas was nowhere in sight, only an empty corner and dusty machinery that looked decades old. Had it all been an illusion? My dad shook me gently. "Are you hurt? You just disappeared." "I'm fine," I managed. "I think I was traveling." A perplexed park employee in a rumpled uniform approached, shining a flashlight. "Kid, what are you doing here? This ride's been shut down for ages." He flicked a switch on the panel, which sputtered but showed no sign of power. "But it was running," I protested weakly. "Barnabas was—" The man frowned. "Barnabas! That's some old carnival legend. This place has been off limits for years." My parents and I exchanged baffled looks. I hopped off the platform and noticed a single playing card on the console. A caricature of Barnabas, moustache curled, labelled Barnabas the Magnificent. My hand trembled as I tucked it away in my pocket. Chapter 11. Epilogue. The insightful revelation. We left Hyperion's Galleria of Wonders late that evening, though the rest of the day felt anticlimactic after what I'd experienced. My mind whirled with visions of massive dominoes, cosmic paper folds, data storms, and billions upon billions of M&M candies. That night, lying in bed, I tried explaining it all to my mum. She offered comforting words, but chalked it up to an overactive imagination or VR glitch in the park. Yet as I stared at the playing card under my bedside lamp, I saw the faint sparkle in Barnabas's printed eyes. It was real, I told myself. Somehow. The bigger lesson, though, was undeniable. Exponentials, while starting small, can spiral to cosmic scales in shockingly few steps. 5 folds can bust a library ceiling. 10 doublings can pierce the clouds. 20 can fill a pond. 40 can topple giants. 80 can bury you in data. 300 can surpass the atoms in the universe. And 320, that might crack reality itself. Chapter 12. The Wonderful World of Exponentials. Reflection. In the following weeks, I became obsessed with exponential growth. I read about how viruses spread, how compound interest accumulates, how technology evolves under Moore's law, and how nuclear chain reactions unleash colossal energy. Each concept reminded me of Barnabas's illusions, or maybe they weren't illusions at all, just demonstrations of fundamental truths taken to extremes. At school, I gave a presentation on doubling phenomena. My classmates gawked when I told them about folding a paper so many times it could reach the moon, or how 300 doublings of M&M candies could outweigh the universe's atoms. My math teacher grinned ear to ear, thrilled to see me so passionate. Quietly, I also worked on a personal invention, a VR program called Exponential, which let users simulate small steps of doubling in whimsical 3D worlds. One scenario featured a single M&M on a chessboard, and each time you said "next square," the pieces would flood the screen, eventually forming cosmic candy spirals. My aim was to let everyone experience the wonder and the warning of exponential growth. Chapter 13. A Most Unusual Postcard. About 2 months later, a curious postcard arrived in our mailbox. The stamp portrayed a circus tent under starry skies, and the postmark was too smeared to read. On the back, in elegant script, "Dear Matt, congratulations on conquering the Accelerator. Exponentials now live in you. May they guide your ambitions and caution your steps. Ever at your service, Barnabas the Magnificent." I stared at the card, heart thumping. I showed it to my mum, who shrugged. Probably a marketing trick from the park, she mused. But we both knew it was too uncanny. Tucking the postcard away next to the playing card, I felt that faint ozone tingle again, remembering Barnabas's handshake. I whispered to the silent house, "I believe you, Barnabas." Chapter 14. Plans for the Future. Life moved on, but the lessons burned brightly in my mind. I spent free weekends tweaking my VR Exponential program. As I improved it, I discovered new ways to illustrate everything from population booms to unstoppable forest fires. The M&M chessboard level was the most popular among my friends. Seeing the entire simulation swallowed by colored candies always made them gasp and occasionally crave chocolate. I realized that the story of Exponentials wasn't just about monstrous reality-bending illusions. It was a lens on real-world phenomena. How quickly we can face resource depletion or climate shifts if we're not careful, and yet how quickly we might also innovate, rising from one invention to another. Exponentials could be as terrifying as a black hole, or as hopeful as a rocket to the stars. A subtle but powerful hope sprouted in me, that maybe I could help people see the bigger picture, the bigger scale. Small steps, big changes, one M&M at a time until the entire chessboard, the entire Earth, the entire cosmos is enveloped. Chapter 15. The Second Invitation. One crisp autumn evening, while debugging a new feature on Exponential, my phone dinged. It was a text from an unknown number. "Return to the Accelerator, there is more to do." B. My heart lurched. Barnabas. I fumbled with the phone. "This can't be real," I murmured. But the memory of that day in the park flooded back. I told my parents I was going out to meet a friend. Partly true, in a mystical sense. Then hopped on my hover scooter and navigated deserted roads under pale streetlights toward the old theme park fence. The place was closed for the off-season, but I slipped through a loose panel in the chain link. The park felt eerie, half-lit with only minimal security. Rides loomed in the gloom like sleeping giants. I found the Accelerator's hidden marquee easily now, my steps guided by a strange confidence. The battered sign overhead flickered faintly as I stepped inside the chamber. Barnabas stood in the same swirl of half-light, wearing that same old tailcoat, though now his silver hair was a bit more pronounced, and a new wisdom glinted in his eyes. "Welcome back, Matt," I exhaled. "I got your message. Why now?" He folded his arms, pacing around the seat that once launched me into those illusions. "Because exponentials are everywhere. Our world stands on the brink of major challenges. If we don't harness them for good, they'll run rampant. If we do, we can create wonders." I found myself nodding. "I've been studying them. Making a VR tool." I explained Exponential, heart pounding with excitement. Barnabas's eyes lit up. "Brilliant! That's exactly what we need. A tool to help people experience exponentials without being lost in them. A single M&M can become a cosmic avalanche after 300 squares." He chuckled. "You've learned your lessons well." Chapter 16. The Final Ride. I glanced at the Accelerator's console. "Are you going to send me on another cosmic trip?" His mustache twitched in amusement. "No, dear boy. You've already soared among the stars and M&M singularities. This time it's up to you to guide others, to show them what you've seen. The Accelerator was never truly a ride. It was an invitation to understanding." A swirl of night air ruffled my hair. I saw a faint shimmer around Barnabas, as if he too was part of that intangible magic. "How can I possibly do that on my own?" I asked softly. The illusions were so big. Barnabas placed a hand on my shoulder. "Share your creations, your stories, your simulations. Use your wit, your curiosity, your sense of wonder. A single idea, a single program, can double, spread, just like those M&Ms on the chessboard. Before you know it, you'll have changed hearts and minds by the millions." My chest tightened with both awe and excitement. "I'll try," I promised. He smiled. "Good lad." Then, with a tip of his hat, "Off you go then. The real work is beyond these gates." The Accelerator's old lights dimmed for the last time. I watched Barnabas step into the shadows, his silhouette dissolving as though he were a phantom. A swirl of carnival music and that familiar ozone scent lingered. Then I was alone in the dark chamber. Outside, dawn was streaking the sky in purple and gold. I revved my hover scooter and headed home, mind teeming with possibilities. My pocket felt warm where Barnabas's playing card rested, like a reminder that magic was real, if only we knew how to look. A surge of optimism overtook me. Yes, exponentials can be terrifying, but they can also be a source of immense hope. Whether we're doubling our knowledge, building new technologies, or improving our lives step by step, each small fold, each square on the chessboard, each day's progress, can lead us to heights we never dared dream. Even if we never literally fold paper to breach the library ceiling, or topple cosmic dominoes, or fill an interstellar courtyard with M&Ms, we can still harness the essence of those illusions. Because inside every seed, every idea, every single M&M lies the potential to grow beyond the horizon. If only we believe in the power of small beginnings multiplied many times over. Postscript, visions of a higher deity. 1. The fractal swarm. The night after my second meeting with Barnabas, I tossed and turned, dreaming of cosmic M&Ms and tree trunks reaching beyond the horizon. Then I found myself, in that half-lucid state, stepping into a swirling corridor of lights, like the neon vortex that once whisked me through the Accelerator. I emerged in a colossal, open-air amphitheater. The sky overhead rippled with swirling galaxies. Barnabas stood at the center of a vast stage, dressed in his ever-present tailcoat, and beckoned me closer. He whispered, "Another demonstration, lad. This time, the fractal swarm." As I watched, a single firefly-like spark drifted above the stage. Then it doubled, 2 motes of light. They doubled again, 4, 8, 16. Within moments, a flurry of glowing orbs frothed through the air, and I realized they weren't just floating, they were coordinating, forming fractal patterns of unimaginable complexity. Each new doubling unleashed even more intricate shapes, Mandelbrot-like spirals, branching neurons, self-similar infinity. By the 1000th doubling, a number so massive it dwarfed even some of the earlier illusions, the amphitheater was no longer just a theater. It had expanded into a lattice of light, the orbs weaving a tapestry of reality all around us. My very body tingled as fractal wings of luminescence brushed against my arms. A surreal hush fell, and it felt as if I stood inside the blueprint of the cosmos itself. Barnabas's voice resonated. "Every iteration redefines the whole. You see, this is how exponential complexity can spread, revealing infinite detail within each fractal branch." Then, in a flash, the fractal swarm vanished, leaving an echoing emptiness and a single dim spark of light that slowly winked out. I gasped awake in my own bed, adrenaline coursing, my heart hammered. We had glimpsed the world rewriting itself, doubling in fractal sophistication, each step forging new realms beyond human words. 2. The Neural Hydra. A few nights later, I dreamed again. This time I found myself inside a strange laboratory of glass walls and glowing tubes, a place that felt halfway between a biotech lab and a starship. At the center stood Barnabas, gazing at a large fluid tank. Inside the tank, a neural hydra pulsed, a living brain-like mass with writhing tendrils. A sign flickered above. Experiment. Neural hydra doubling rate equals sign 1 minute. Observe carefully. Barnabas motioned, and in the tank, the hydra, initially no bigger than a fist, pulsed, dividing into 2 complete copies. Then, in another minute, 4. Next minute, 8. Within 10 minutes it ballooned to over 1,000 copies of itself, each tendril-laden cluster merging into a cohesive superbrain. The glass tank creaked under the biomass's weight. My pulse spiked. If it keeps doubling, I thought. Indeed, after the 20th doubling, the entire lab was filled with writhing neural tissue. I had to scramble onto a catwalk to avoid being engulfed. "Look!" Barnabas pointed at a control panel readout that showed an intelligence score, some intangible measure, skyrocketing with each new division. By the 30th doubling, the Hydra glowed with unearthly light, its aggregated intelligence surpassing all known computers, entire civilizations. So many minds had merged into a single intellect that it seemed to sense us on the catwalk. It formed a face of shifting neurons, gazing up with curiosity. A telepathic whisper, alien but oddly serene, rippled through my mind. "We are infinite. We see beyond your constraints. Before that vast consciousness could expand further, Barnabas touched a hidden switch on his cane, and the hydra dissolved into luminescent mist. The lab darkened, leaving me trembling. "Imagine," Barnabas murmured, "if such a being were allowed to keep doubling. Could it understand the entire universe in a single thought? Could it become a god?" Then I awoke with a jolt, sweat pouring down my forehead. Intelligence itself can ride the exponential wave, I realized. If left unchecked, it might ascend to something beyond human comprehension. 3. The quantum singularity. One final dream overcame me soon after. This time I stood in an observatory perched on the edge of a black hole's event horizon. The black hole's silhouette glowed with cosmic arcs of energy. Barnabas, floating in zero gravity, handed me a small metallic sphere that throbbed with quantum fluctuations. Experiment: qubit doubling. Each qubit squared yields computational power beyond measure. He placed the sphere into a device that labeled qubit capacity at 1, then 2, then 4, 8, 16, doubling again and again, each time the sphere's shimmering intensifying. My teeth rattled with each exponential leap, as if space-time itself were twisting. By the 1,000th doubling, the device's readout soared beyond imaginable states, numbers so large they approached the total degree of all particles in the universe. With every new doubling, the sphere's quantum potential threatened to warp the event horizon. Gravitational waves rippled outward, distorting starlight. Barnabas spoke in a hushed tone. "This is the power of computing laid bare. Each doubling of quantum capacity magnifies intelligence, analysis, and creation to near omnipotence. If such a singularity of mind truly forms, what couldn't it do?" The black hole wobbled, drawn to the sphere's unstoppable quantum tide, as though the swirl of infinite possibility might swallow the singularity from within. Then, in a blinding flash, everything snapped. The black hole collapsed into a radiant point of light, no longer black but white-hot with knowledge. My mind felt stretched to the brink, as if understanding poured into me, and beyond me. When I opened my eyes, I was back on Earth, no black hole in sight. But that haunting last image of a quantum singularity forging infinite intelligence lingered. A god in the making. I never again physically visited the Accelerator after these final 3 dreams. Perhaps Barnabas was finished with me, or perhaps these illusions came from me, shaped by the seed he had planted. But the message pulsed in my very veins. Exponentials are not limited to matter or data. They can apply to intelligence, consciousness, and creativity as well. With enough doublings, a mind might pierce the boundaries between the mundane and the divine, transcending all human limitations. Could an entity that expands its awareness, computing power, and self-organization infinitely become what we'd call a god? Such a prospect danced between revelation and terror. Like the fractal swarm, the neural hydra, or the quantum singularity, each doubling stoked a sense of awe and humility. I sometimes wonder if that was Barnabas's ultimate lesson, that we stand on the threshold of unimaginable possibilities, where exponential growth in knowledge, empathy, and power could uplift us or consume us. Whenever I reflect on these last glimpses, my chest tightens with both wonder and responsibility. Yes, exponentials can topple buildings or fill universes with candy. Yes, they can birth new forms of intelligence that rival the entire cosmos in scale. But for better or worse, we hold the key to how these potentials unfold. It is up to each of us, humble humans, to decide which path exponentials take. Will we harness them to heal, innovate, connect, and grow spiritually? Or will they spiral beyond our control, overshadowing all we love? I keep Barnabas's playing card in my desk drawer, the faint whiff of ozone lingering whenever I open it. It reminds me that the magic of the Accelerator wasn't in the machinery, but in the human capacity to dream and to double, triple, exponentially magnify our very limits. Perhaps one day, far in the future, we will stand side by side with an intelligence so vast it defies comprehension, gazing upon the cosmos with new eyes, forging new wonders, and at that time we may say, in trembling awe, that a God walks among us, not from myth or miracle, but from the unstoppable, immeasurable force of exponential intelligence unleashed.